The gallery buzzed with excitement, the air thick with anticipation. It was opening night, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment as I watched the crowd gather around my photographs. This was my solo exhibition, the culmination of years of hard work, countless hours behind the camera, and moments spent capturing life's most fleeting details. There were artists, critics, and people whose opinions I respected. And among them was Charlotte, my wife. She had promised she would be there, standing beside me, her presence a reminder of everything I worked for. I glanced at my watch. It was already past 7 p.m., and still, there was no sign of her. I wasn't surprised. Charlotte had always been late, her career as an editor at a high-profile fashion magazine often demanding her attention long after normal hours. It wasn't unusual for her to miss events or arrive long after the fun had started. I could almost hear her excuses now, something about a last-minute deadline or an unexpected meeting. I tried not to let it bother me. This night was supposed to be about my work, not about Charlotte's lateness. Still, there was an empty space inside me as I stood alone, greeting guests and answering questions about my work. The buzzing conversation around me seemed distant, muffled by the weight of expectation I felt bearing down on my shoulders. I wanted Charlotte there. Not just as my wife, but as my partner. She had promised me this night, and yet, I stood there without her. As the evening went on, my thoughts drifted. I tried to lose myself in the sea of compliments and congratulations, but it wasn't enough. There was a part of me that remained fixated on her absence. I wanted to show her the work I'd done, to have her recognize the effort I'd poured into each photograph. But Charlotte had always been more concerned with her own world, the whirlwind of fashion shows, late-night edits, and the constant scramble for the next big story. And then I heard it. A burst of laughter. It came from the back of the gallery, near the private lounge area where a few guests had retreated. The sound was unmistakable, the high-pitched laugh that belonged to Charlotte. A laugh I had heard countless times before, but tonight, it grated against my nerves. It wasn't the first time she disappeared into a conversation with one of her friends. But something about the way she laughed tonight, it felt different. It felt like she wasn't just having fun, she was hiding something. Curiosity pulled at me, and I made my way towards the source of the laughter. As I approached the back, I could hear voices clearly now, Charlotte and Jessica, one of her closest friends. But it wasn't just idle chit-chat. The conversation I overheard hit me like a punch to the gut. They were talking about me. And not in the way I had hoped. "I think we can make this work," Charlotte said, her voice low but clear enough for me to hear. "Dylan's always been the serious one. He's never going to suspect anything. We'll play it up on social media, make it look like we're falling apart. That way, I can get the attention I deserve." Jessica's laughter followed, as if the idea was something to be proud of. "I love it. You can fake a fight, maybe even some tears. People will eat it up. It'll get you so much sympathy. We'll make sure your followers know how neglected you've been. Dylan won't even know what hit him." My heart raced, but I stood frozen. The world around me spun. The words came crashing in like a tidal wave, and I could barely hold on. Charlotte, the woman I loved, was planning a public spectacle, a drama staged for the sake of her followers. All of this for attention, for sympathy, an act I was supposed to be oblivious to. My mind raced, struggling to comprehend what I was hearing. But what struck me the hardest wasn't just the betrayal, it was the calculation behind it. Charlotte, always so poised, so controlled, had planned this. She had been thinking about it, orchestrating it, while I stood here, believing in our marriage, in our future together. And now it felt like everything I had worked for, everything I thought we shared, had been reduced to a game. I wanted to confront her right then and there, to demand answers. But I didn't. I didn't because I knew that wasn't the way to handle it. If Charlotte thought this was just a harmless joke, I would let her have her moment. Let her play her game. But I wouldn't let her win. I wouldn't let her manipulate me. Instead, I took a deep breath, adjusted my posture, and walked back toward the gallery, pretending nothing was amiss. The guests were still milling about, unaware of the storm that had just unfolded in the back room. Charlotte finally appeared, looking slightly flustered, as though she'd just arrived. She rushed toward me, as expected, and without hesitation, she began to weave her drama. "We need some space," she said, her voice loud enough for others to hear. This relationship isn't working anymore. I think we need to take a break, Dylan." Her words cut through the air like a knife. But it wasn't her words that stung, it was the fact that she was playing this part so effortlessly, so openly, in front of everyone. The tension in the room grew thicker. Guests turned their attention toward us, their whispers like a background hum to the increasingly uncomfortable scene unfolding. I met her gaze, trying to hide the hurt and the anger swirling inside me. "If that's what you want," I replied, my voice steady, calm. Charlotte's eyes widened in surprise. She hadn't expected me to respond this way, I could tell. She had probably assumed I would be upset, defensive, maybe even angry. But instead, I simply stood there, silent, letting her words hang in the air. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of a dramatic reaction. As she looked at me, searching for any sign of emotion, I saw the brief flicker of doubt in her eyes. For the first time in a long time, Charlotte didn't have control over the situation. She didn't know how to handle my calm, my indifference. The evening carried on, but for me, it had ended. I had made my decision. This wasn't the woman I had married. This wasn't the woman I thought I knew. And I wasn't going to let her continue this charade at my expense. Later that night, after the guests had left and the gallery had emptied, I found her standing by the door, still trying to get through to me. She had called me several times, but I didn't pick up. I didn't need to hear her excuses. I knew exactly what had been happening behind my back. "I know what you did," I said flatly, cutting through the silence between us. Charlotte's face twisted in anger, but there was something else there too, fear. She knew it was over. And despite the anger, the hurt, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over me. As I turned to leave, I heard her shout my name. But it was too late. The game was over. And I had already made my choice. The days that followed were a blur. I went through the motions, my mind still reeling from what I had overheard in the gallery. My photography work had always been my escape, but now even the lens of my camera couldn't blur the image of Charlotte's betrayal. Every time I looked at the pictures I had taken, I saw her face, not as the woman I loved, but as a stranger, a woman who had used me for her own gain, played a role in a show I wasn't invited to. I tried to focus on the positives. The show had been a success, people had praised my work, and I had garnered the kind of attention I had always dreamed of. But none of that mattered. Not when Charlotte, the person I trusted most, was willing to throw it all away for a cheap thrill on social media. I remember the night after the gallery event. She texted me over and over again, her messages filled with guilt, apologies, and what seemed like an insincere attempt at making things right. She had written that she didn't mean it, that it was just a joke, and that she was under pressure. But I knew better. How could it just be a joke when she had planned it so carefully? How could I trust her words when her actions had already spoken volumes? I didn't reply. The next few days were a constant back and forth of tension and silence between us. I still lived in the apartment we had shared, but it no longer felt like home. It felt like a stage, and I was the unwilling actor, forced to watch Charlotte continue her performance in front of the world. She tried to act like everything was fine, but I could see through it. I could see how she used every opportunity to remind her followers of our problems. The posts, the cryptic captions, the carefully curated images of her supposed heartache. She made sure her followers knew all about her struggles with me. What shocked me most wasn't how desperate she was for attention, but how easy it was for her to twist the truth. I had always known Charlotte loved the spotlight, but this was something else. It wasn't just about her career or her job. It was about control, about playing the victim for the world to see. And I was her pawn. It wasn't long before the first cracks began to show in her world. Her social media following exploded after she posted about our breakup, but the attention wasn't what she had expected. Instead of sympathy, there was backlash. People started questioning her actions. Her close friends started distancing themselves, unsure of who she really was. A few calls were made, and soon, word spread that Charlotte had been orchestrating drama for clout. Her reputation began to unravel, piece by piece, and no matter how much she tried to salvage it, the damage was done. Meanwhile, I threw myself deeper into my work. I needed something solid to hold on to, something that wasn't built on lies. My photos became my only form of expression, the only thing that still felt real in a world that was now full of pretense. I began taking on new projects, ones that challenged me, pushed me to explore new techniques and angles. Photography was the one thing I could still rely on. It was the only thing that kept me grounded in a time when everything else felt like it was falling apart. But despite all of that, despite the new projects and the praise for my work, I couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness. There was a part of me that missed Charlotte, the person I thought she was. I missed the days when I could come home and talk to her about everything. The good days, the simple moments that we used to share before it all became about appearances. I could feel her presence in the apartment, lingering in the corners, in the silence that filled the space between us. When I came home from work, I would find her things still around, her perfume on the vanity, her clothes hanging in the closet. It was like I was living with a ghost, a version of her that no longer existed. It didn't help that she kept reaching out, trying to get me to talk, to engage with her. She called, she texted, she emailed, each message filled with more desperation. At first, I ignored everything, but soon enough, I started reading them. They were all the same, pleas for forgiveness, promises of change, and guilt-laden words that tried to rewrite everything I had heard that night at the gallery. But nothing she said could undo the truth. Nothing could take back the words she had spoken with Jessica. One night, after weeks of silence, I finally gave in. I agreed to meet her at a small cafe, a neutral ground. She looked different, distraught, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes. For a moment, I almost felt sympathy for her. But then I remembered everything, the lies, the manipulation, the way she had used our marriage for her own gain. It was hard to feel anything other than indifference. "Dylan, I'm sorry. I was stupid," she began, her voice shaky. "I didn't mean to hurt you. It was just... I don't know, everything got out of control. You know how much pressure I'm under. I just thought if I played it this way, I thought it would be different. I thought it would get people to care about me for once." I didn't interrupt. I didn't need to hear any more. I already knew the truth. It wasn't about pressure. It wasn't about feeling neglected. It was about her need for validation, her need to be adored by people who didn't even know her. "I know what you did," I said, my voice quiet, but firm. She froze. Her eyes widened, and I could see the panic begin to rise in her chest. "What are you talking about?" she asked, though I knew she already knew. "I heard everything," I said, my words cold. "I know what you said to Jessica. I know what you were planning." The color drained from her face, and for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Real fear, not the kind she put on for her followers, but something raw, something genuine. "I didn't mean it. It wasn't like that," she stammered, but I could tell it was already too late. The trust was gone, shattered beyond repair. "I can't do this anymore, Charlotte," I said quietly, standing up. "I gave you everything, and you used it for your own gain. I can't be part of this lie." She reached out for me, her hand trembling. "Please, Dylan, don't leave me. Please, we can fix this. I promise, I'll change. Just give me a chance." I shook my head, turning to leave. There was nothing left to fix. Not with her. Not with the person she had become. I walked out of the cafe, leaving her behind. And with each step I took, I felt a little lighter. The days that followed felt like a strange mix of numbness and relief. I spent more time in my studio, diving deeper into my photography, the click of the camera shutter a welcome distraction from the chaos in my personal life. The projects I had taken on were demanding, but in a way, they gave me purpose. They allowed me to forget, at least for a little while, the aftermath of my marriage and the slow unraveling of Charlotte's carefully crafted life. It wasn't long before the consequences of Charlotte's actions began to surface. At first, it was subtle, a comment here or there from mutual friends, a news article mentioning her public breakup, and how the supposed drama had captivated her followers. Charlotte's social media had exploded in the days after our supposed separation. She was getting the attention she craved, but not in the way she had hoped. I watched as the story she'd created spiraled out of her control. What she had intended to be a sympathetic, heartfelt portrayal of a woman struggling in a marriage, soon turned into something darker. People started questioning her authenticity. A few of her close friends, those who had once supported her through every high and low, started to pull away, their loyalty shaken by the truth that had come to light. A post from one of Charlotte's former colleagues went viral, calling out the manipulation behind her heartbreak narrative. The post had been shared thousands of times, and soon after, others began to share their own stories about the countless times Charlotte had used people for personal gain. The facade of the perfect wife, the grieving woman betrayed by her husband, started to crack. And as it cracked, the world saw the reality of who Charlotte really was, someone who would do anything to get what she wanted. It wasn't just her followers who were reacting. Her professional world began to crumble, too. The magazine where she worked, one of the most prestigious in the fashion industry, announced that they were reassessing her position. Projects she had been working on for months were suddenly put on hold or cancelled. The editors who had once praised her work began distancing themselves, and whispers of her stage drama began to make their way through the industry. The magazine wasn't willing to tolerate the bad publicity, especially when it affected their brand. I felt no joy in her downfall, no satisfaction in seeing her world unravel. I didn't even feel anger. There was only a hollow emptiness, a quiet certainty that I had made the right decision. She had made her choices, and now she was facing the consequences. But in the midst of it all, I couldn't shake the thought that there was something more I had to do, something that would bring finality to everything. The divorce papers had been filed weeks ago, and Charlotte had refused to sign them at first. She was still holding on, clinging to the hope that somehow she could manipulate me into taking her back, into forgiving her. But I had made my peace with it. I had accepted that there was no turning back. I was done with the lies. Done with the pretense. And now, it was time to move forward with my life. One evening, while I was working late in my studio, I received a message from Charlotte. I had been ignoring her calls and texts for days, but this message was different. It was short, but it hit me harder than any of her previous attempts to contact me. Please meet me. I need to explain myself. We need to talk. For a moment, I hesitated. There was nothing left to talk about, was there? But I knew I couldn't keep running from this. I couldn't keep pretending like I didn't care. I owed it to myself, and to Charlotte, to have one final conversation, to end it once and for all. I agreed to meet her at the same cafe where we had met weeks before. When I arrived, Charlotte was already there, sitting at a table by the window. She looked different, tired, thinner, worn down. Her once impeccable appearance had started to falter, and I could see the toll her actions had taken on her. The woman sitting in front of me was no longer the confident, poised editor I had married. She looked defeated. "I didn't think you'd come," she said, her voice small, almost hesitant. I took a seat across from her. "I didn't think you'd want to talk after everything. But here we are." Charlotte looked down at her hands, twisting the napkin nervously. For a moment, there was silence between us. It was the first time in a long time that I didn't feel the need to fill the silence with words. "I messed up," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry for everything. I never meant for it to go this far. I thought if I did this, I could fix things. Get people to notice me. I thought I could win them back." "By lying?" I asked, my voice steady. "By manipulating me, by making our marriage a game?" Charlotte's eyes welled up with tears, but this time, I didn't reach out. "I couldn't. I never meant for it to hurt you," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought I was doing it for us. For me. I didn't realize how much damage it would do." I couldn't look at her the way I used to. The anger, the disappointment, it was all there, but it didn't burn the way it used to. Now it was just cold. A quiet knowing that I had been right all along. There was nothing left for me here. "I don't believe you," I said, my voice firm. "It's not just about the lies, Charlotte. It's about the person you became. I don't even recognize you anymore." She shook her head. "I can't change the past. I can't undo the things I've done. But I'm asking you for one last chance. I'll prove it to you. I'll make it right." I stood up, my decision made. "It's too late for that. You've made your choice. And I've made mine." Her face fell, and for a second, I almost felt bad for her. But then I remembered everything. The lies, the manipulation, the cruelty disguised as a joke. She had lost me long before this conversation. I turned and walked out of the cafe, knowing I would never look back. The weeks that followed were quiet, almost unsettling in their stillness. Charlotte had tried to contact me a few more times, but I had ignored every call, every message. I knew she was still struggling with the consequences of her actions, but there was no part of me that wanted to comfort her. I had already given her more than enough chances, and every one of them had been squandered. As for me, the world didn't stop turning. Life went on, even if it didn't feel quite the same. My work had continued to flourish, as I had expected. The photography world took notice of my solo exhibition, and offers for new projects came pouring in. But even the excitement of a new venture couldn't shake the quiet emptiness that hung over me. There was a sense of finality, like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, looking out at a landscape that had once been familiar but was now irrevocably changed. I kept my distance from the drama surrounding Charlotte's fallout. I didn't need to hear about it from the gossip columns or friends who still had ties to her. I knew the details. Her career had crumbled, her friends had abandoned her, and the followers she had so desperately tried to win over had begun to see through her manufactured persona. But as much as I could have taken satisfaction in her downfall, I didn't feel anything. Not relief, not anger, not even pity. There was just nothing. What bothered me more than anything was the way I had been complicit in it all, even if I hadn't been aware of it. How had I not seen it coming? How had I missed the signs that Charlotte wasn't the woman I thought she was? The woman I had married? The woman I thought I was building a life with? There were days when I found myself asking those questions, staring out of the window of my studio, the city lights flickering in the distance, a reminder of how far I had come and how much I had lost. But as much as it hurt, I knew the answer. I had wanted to believe. I had wanted to believe in Charlotte, in us. I had wanted to believe that the woman I married was still there beneath all the lies and the need for validation. But I had been fooling myself. There were moments when I thought about calling her, reaching out just to see if she was okay. There were times when I wondered if she truly regretted what she had done, or if she was just lamenting the loss of her image, the loss of everything she had worked so hard to build. But I quickly shook off those thoughts. I wasn't her savior. I wasn't the one who could fix this. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. As the weeks turned into months, Charlotte's presence faded into the background of my life, like a shadow that had finally dissipated. There was no more noise, no more drama. It was as if she had vanished completely, leaving nothing behind but the echoes of a life we once shared. I didn't feel any better for it. The hole in my chest still ached, but it was different now. It wasn't a wound that bled anymore. It was a scar, a reminder of something that had been, something I couldn't change. And then one day, I heard from her again. It wasn't a message or a call this time. It was a letter. The envelope was simple, clean, no extra frills or dramatic flourishes. I wasn't sure why I even bothered to open it, but something compelled me to. The letter was brief, written in Charlotte's familiar, neat handwriting. Dylan, I know this is the last thing you probably want from me. But I can't go on without acknowledging the damage I've done. I've lost everything, my career, my friends, and most of all, I've lost you. I was selfish, and I hurt you in ways I never intended. I thought I could handle it all, that I could control everything. But in the end, I only made things worse. I know you don't owe me anything. But I want you to know that I'm sorry, for everything. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope one day, you'll find peace. You deserve that. You deserve more than what I gave you. Goodbye. The words were simple. Sincere, even. But I didn't feel the rush of relief or closure that I had imagined. It was just another page in a chapter one had already closed. I folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the envelope, and set it on my desk. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I just didn't feel anything anymore. The life I had once dreamed of with Charlotte was gone, replaced by something new. A future that didn't involve the woman I had once loved, but one that was built on the strength I had found in myself, one photo at a time. I wasn't sure what lay ahead, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was walking towards something real, something free from the weight of Charlotte's world, her lies, her games. I had my work, my art, and the knowledge that I had made the right choice. The rest, well, the rest was just noise. And I had finally learned to stop listening.